I want to begin with questions. Somebody who has a better access to internet can have a better personality, better growth, better exposure as compared to somebody who doesn't have an access to internet. Is it true or false? A geographical location like somewhere, let's say in a remote area in Kashmir, which is not having accessibility to internet, will be far behind to a place like Bengaluru where there's a proper connectivity of internet. True or false? A place where there are good infrastructural facilities as well as good internet access and literacy is going to be far ahead and will contribute in GDP way more than a place which is way backward, doesn't have infrastructural as well as the technological advancements. True or false? Well, these are some serious questions that we will be diving into in today's session. The agenda for us is to understand digital divide in a holistic manner. This is a topic that KAS Mains examination, UPSC examination and other administrative examination loves to ask. A question is more probable in somewhere like this where it can be asked about the description of what is digital divide, and it can be asked in respect to the Indian growth as well, that mention how this digital divide aggravates the socio-economic inequalities in India. So we have a lot of questions to answer and a lot of learning is waiting for you. Luckily, you have this internet access, hence you can watch this session and interestingly understand some of the very deep-rooted concepts. I would love to welcome you. This is me, Nitika Duggal, welcoming you on Universal Group of Institutions channel. I hope you have already subscribed to the channel. We are bringing you amazing concepts, amazing understanding based on different questions that can be asked in the different government examinations. Well, we at Universal Group of Institutions are also offering you degree courses and we make you job ready. We prepare you for the government examination. So if you are interested, you can check the description box below and you will get the wholesome understanding of the amazing projects being carried out by our Universal Group of Institutions. If you want to avail a seat, you can refer to my referral code NIT006 and avail attractive discounts. I hope you have already hit the like button. Let's start with the video on the topic of digital divide. What actually is digital divide? Like the name suggests, there is certainly a divide, a gap, a lacuna between a particular place or a household or a class which has an access to internet as compared to somebody who doesn't have the access to internet. So there is this digital divide that we are talking about, which refers to the gap between individuals, households, it can be businesses or geographic areas with varying access to modern information and communication technology. So it's not just related to internet, it is related to the ICT. Now ICT in itself is a topic that we are going to explore in depth. So when I say ICT, it is about information and communication technology. It refers to different wide spectrum of the technologies that can be a part of it. So it encompasses the disparities in internet access, in the digital literacy and the technological infrastructure. So it is not just related to having the access to internet, but also the access to the literacy, whether I know how to use internet, whether I'm literate enough to make use of the resources that we have. So it is way more than just having the access to internet, right? Now the next thing that we need to know is what are the different types of the digital divide. There are different types ranging from global to economic to social. There are more types than you can think. So let's talk about each one of them one by one. We'll start with global digital divide. Now what is this global digital divide? It's the gap which is between the developed and the developing countries. Now, clearly at the time of COVID, this disparity could be properly observed. Developed countries had vaccines and everybody was vaccinated way before what we observed in underdeveloped countries or the developing countries, right? So the gap between the developed and the developing nations in terms of the ICT penetration. Urban-rural digital divide. Of course, this is a very common divide that we can talk with respect to our country. So, urban-rural digital divide is the disparity in technology access between urban and the rural population, like the name suggests. Now, there is also economic digital divide. What is that? The difference in access based on the income levels. If somebody who is rich, even though he is living in a very tech-savvy place like, let's say, Bengaluru, but the person cannot afford internet access, then that is also, of course, a divide, a disparity. So, economic digital divide refers to the difference in the access based on the income levels, affecting affordability. Now, there is another one which is educational digital divide. The inequality in digital literacy and access to online education. For example, let's say in the same household there is a Wi-Fi, but an elder generation might not make a better use of the internet how a smart young generation is making probably. So that is the educational digital divide that we can refer to. Next is the gender digital divide. Now, the gap in digital access between men and women, especially in the patriarchal societies. So let's now come out of the focus from the towns. When we talk about the rural areas, you would see that the parents, even today, we cannot deny the fact that even today this disparity exists. The parents might give a phone to their son rather than giving a phone to their daughter. And this exactly is a divide that leads to the gender digital divide. And this is more so in all the patriarchal societies and patriarchal households as well. And we can't deny this. Next, social and age-based digital divide. The differences in technology usage based on the age, based on the caste, based on the social backgrounds. So like I said, there are more digital divides than we can think. I think global digital divide is something that is understandable. There's a developed country, there's a developing country, there is an underdeveloped country. There are divides which we can understand very well, rural and the urban one. Even the gender-based divides we can understand. The economic-based divides also we can understand. But when it comes to the social and age-based digital divide, it's kind of like a subpart also to all of these, but can be talked about separately. Because of the different ages, because of the different castes, the kind of divide which comes at times. Somebody of a lower caste may not have that well access to the internet, even when that person is staying in best of the cities with the best of the accessibility, and might also have the knowledge, the potential of the knowledge, but is still deprived because of the other hard reasons of the society. Now, we need to talk about what causes this digital divide. We can make an inference about what causes this digital divide. Number one is the infrastructure itself, isn't it? Then there can be the household income that plays a role here. Also, there can be maybe there is everything okay, but there is no digital literacy that we have. We're not able to grasp how to make use of the technology, even though we have the technology. Somebody has a particular cell phone but doesn't know how to make use of that cell phone, right? Then there can be problems related to, let's say, most of the cell phones work on, I can say, either in English or Hindi. Nowadays, we have regional languages also which are a part of the mobile phones, which is greatly revolutionizing the country. But if somebody is having an access to a phone which operates only in English or Hindi, then that makes it difficult for the person to access if he knows only one particular language, that is a regional language that he knows. That also creates a problem. And even the inbuilt languages are not in all the different languages that probably we are used to. That is also a possibility. Maybe we have a cell phone that may work in Kannada or in Tamil or in Malayalam, but maybe I'm using a dialect which is not there in my phone, right? Then there are other possibilities also. So let's just read about all the causes of the digital divide. The first one, like we discussed, the infrastructure deficit, the limited broadband penetration, weak mobile network coverage, and the lack of the electricity. What will you do with the internet or the technological instruments if you do not have electricity in your rural area, in your household. So rudimentary basics should first of all be addressed. Second, economic disparity. High cost of devices, internet services makes technology unaffordable for low-income groups. Of course, we have to address the fact that the internet, buying a cell phone or buying a laptop is not as difficult as maintaining the monthly recharge of the devices for the internet. It's just like a car. Purchasing a car is not as difficult as fueling the car with the fuel, right? Now, third one, digital illiteracy, the lack of awareness and training in using digital tools, especially among the marginalized communities. The fourth one, we can talk about the linguistic barriers, the dominance of English in digital platforms limiting accessibility to the non-English speakers. Now, English domination is, again, like I said, most of the cell phones are also exported and supports English language majorly. So that is also one of the biggest divides or barriers. Next is a gender discrimination, the socio-cultural norms restricting women's access to digital tools in some areas. This we have just discussed. Then comes the government policy gaps. This is where we have to discuss a little more. Inadequate or slow implementation of digital inclusion policies. We'll just talk about the policies that has been implemented by the government to actually take care of this divide, which is all-time increasing rather than being bridged. But we'll talk about the government policies in depth. Now, are there any positives to this whole thing which is sounding very grim? If we have to say that, okay, there is some positivity, that it might just demand some attention from the government, then yeah, we can call it a positive, but in a very casual way, we can say that no, there are no positives. Of course, there's nothing positive about digital divide, but if we have to talk about are there any positives? Yes, it encourages the government's intervention for digital literacy programs, and it creates opportunities for public-private partnerships in technology expansion. Now, these are the points which can be game changer when you're writing it in your mains examination. Because such answers actually makes a difference. Such points that, okay, you're aware that the kind of the effect that you are able to comprehend the positivities of such a divide, which is largely seen as a bane rather than a boon. But we can still extract something positive out of this negative is that it actually creates opportunities. It enhances the possibilities of PPP, public-private partnerships, and it can grab the attention of the government and make them intervene and bring some policies to bring a change. So here comes now the digital divide actually divides the negatives of the digital divide, which are of course many. For example, of course, there is going to be educational gap. Of course, there is going to be the economic inequality. In fact, if we talk about the ripple effects of digital divide, there are far worse digital divide effects than we can even think. For example, talking about the education gap, now the moment there is a gap in education, everything changes. You can change the strata of your family, the class of your family by just education. No education just because of this gap leads to you being, you and your family suffering because of it. The coming generation suffering because of this. So the effects are far more worst than we can talk about, but let's keep it in as broader aspect as possible. But if we start interlinking concepts, this can go on and on, right? Because the implications are far worse than we can even think. So the first one is the education gap, the limited online learning opportunities for students in rural areas. Economic inequality, when we talk about economic inequality, the digital exclusion limits the employment as well. And not just the employment, but also all sorts of entrepreneurship opportunities and other opportunities in general. Governance issue, inability to access e-governance services, leading to the administrative inefficiencies. You know, any job you talk about, even for a particular farmer, if he has access to technology, and if he knows how to make use of the technology, he can revolutionize his own farmland, no matter how small it is. Isn't it? Now, it's very interesting to understand that even when the government is making policies, is bringing a lot of schemes, and the person doesn't know how to actually make use of that scheme because of this illiteracy of the internet. What use will that policy be? I can have e-khata or I can have a particular portal, but I am not able to access it because I do not have the knowledge of accessing it, makes any of the policies that the government is trying to implement meaningless. So that's a huge administrative failure, isn't it? Now, fourth one, the social exclusion, the digital illiteracy leads to the marginalization and reduced civic participation. Now, this could be observed during the COVID time. During the COVID time, the technology and how the technology was used for spreading awareness, and hence the level of mass participation that we could observe in our country was again tremendous thanks to the way the technology was used in spreading the awareness, right? Fifth one, the healthcare disparities, lack of access to telemedicine and online healthcare services in rural regions. Of course, it's not just about the education, but also the health, the two primary pillars that any individual has the fundamental right on. So when it comes to the healthcare disparities, thanks to the internet, where you don't have to even go to a doctor, you can take a consultation over the phone. Right now, the surgeries are happening without going to a particular hospital with the help of the tele-robotics. But I'm talking still a very rudimentary stuff where you can have a conversation with the doctor over the phone or online consultation with the doctor over the phone, rather than visiting a clinic, which is still not there in rural areas or the areas where there is no access to the internet or access to the phones or simple telecommunication. All right? So digital divide certainly divides. Now, are there any steps taken by the government? The answer is, of course, a big yes. Government knows that there is this huge lacuna which needs to be bridged. And there are not just the national initiatives, but also the international initiatives in this regard, like UNESCO's Broadband Commission, which aims at providing the universal internet access. Okay, and the other one is the World Bank's Digital Development Strategy, which focuses on the digital infrastructure and inclusion. So there are some international initiatives. Now let's talk about the Indian specific initiatives. The first one, which we have dealt in quite depth, you can go to the playlist of KAS Mains examination and find all the important KAS Mains topic there as well. So we have talked in depth about the Digital India mission. Here, it enhances the digital literacy and infrastructure. The BharatNet project, which expands the fiber optic networks to the rural areas. This is way faster, like we know. Next one is PMG Disha, which is Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. Now, like the name suggests, Digital Literacy Abhiyan, which promotes digital literacy in the rural areas. Then there are Aadhaar-linked e-governance. We have also taken up a complete topic on e-governance. Do check it out as well in the KAS Mains playlist. Here you have Aadhaar-linked e-governance, which talks about the digital inclusion through direct benefit transfer and online services. So government is making a lot of DBTs, direct bank transfers. No internet access, no DBT, you can't avail the benefits which are meant for you. It's an administrative failure. How everything is linked, you can see for yourself, isn't it? Next one is the 5G and National Broadband Mission, which aims at high-speed internet penetration across the country. So these are some India-specific initiatives. Now let's talk about the Karnataka-specific initiatives. So Karnataka has its state-led initiatives as well, like Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, which promotes digital economy and tech-based jobs, e-governance services, Bhumi project, digitization of land records, Sakala, time-bound government services. All of these are again the initiatives which helps. Then we have Namagrama Nama Yojane, which aims to improve rural connectivity. Next is the tech-based startups in Bengaluru, which is expanding Karnataka's role as a digital revolution hub. Well, of course, Karnataka being the digital capital has a lot of initiatives going on already in this regard, and the digital literacy is far better than the other states. But now let's talk about what are actual challenges. Are there any challenges in bridging the gap? The answer is yes. We also have to deal with the challenges of affordability of the technology, the high device and internet costs like we discussed, last mile connectivity issues, the rural connectivity challenge, we have to tackle that as well, data security and privacy concerns, digital exclusion due to fear of online fraud. This happens in older generation a lot. They're not using the online portals for the communication, and they're not using the online portal for the banking because of this fear of the scams or the fraudulence that may happen or the phishing cases that may happen. Of course, what they do is they have to travel to the bank for every small issue as well that could have been dealt very easily on an app. But they would make sure they travel all the way and go to the bank. So these are the issues that we still have, which are the challenges. Quality of the digital content, need for more regional language content. This in fact is already happening. Already we can see a great boom in the edtech sector where the language-driven models have come, where we teach you in the language mode that you think is best for you, which you are adaptable to. So there are a lot of hirings of teachers now happening in the regional fields where a person can teach, let's say, chemistry in Kannada only, where a person can teach Telugu-based mathematics. So these kind of penetrations are already happening. So is with the questions and the models and the books which are coming now also are now regional language based. In fact, I have a video waiting for you on the role of the ICT in the regional languages and spreading of the regional languages as well. We'll talk more about that in our upcoming sessions. Fifth one, resistance to change, lack of awareness and reluctance to adopt new technologies. So even though you have GPS and GPS is clearly telling you that that's the shorter route, but you will be like, no, I trust my instincts. I will go with my own instincts and not rely on technology. And maybe you find different route which turns out to be way bigger than, way longer than what GPS was showing. There are side effects also, but then yes, technology is of course one very assistive tool. And if not everyone has a proper access to the internet, to the infrastructure, to the technology, or to simply ICT, information and communication technology, of course this divide that comes with a lot of baggage that keeps you far, that doesn't give you a level playing field. It hampers the competition drastically, and yes, the ones who have the access leads the game. That's what the stats also talk about. How you found today's video, do let me know in the comments below. I hope you're liking the sessions. With this is me, Nitika, signing off.